The blessedness of Mordechai and the cursedness of Haman, and obviously that requires a lot of explanation, which we'll probably talk about next week. Suffice to say, it doesn't mean just to get stone drunk for the sake of getting plastered. Obviously, one understanding is simply that, at the end of the day, when you read the story of Purim, you could see, there are heroes and villains. Haman is the villain, Esther, Mordechai, the heroes. When the villain's on top, we're in big trouble. When the hero gets to have the last word, we're safe. And we could somehow see that the Jews' life hangs in balance based on these villains and heroes. And really the Jews had to at one point realize that's nothing to do with them at all. In fact, one of the reasons why Esther chose to invite Achashverosh to a party was specifically because the Jews had said something like, Achosenu Beis HaMalchus, that our sister is in the house of the palace, meaning we have the best lobbyist possible. There's no better, person in that, has the power to whisper into the king's ear than Esther. So we'll be in there, his good graces. We're fine. And Esther specifically therefore invited Haman to this party so that people say, she's inviting the enemy to a party? Maybe she's not really somebody you can rely on. And she specifically did that, says the Gemara, to throw the Jews off, so they shouldn't put their faith and trust in her, but to recognize ultimately that Esther, Achashverosh, Mordechai, they were all puppets in the greater scheme. So Ad Lo Yoda Beinar Haman Baruch Mordechai means to get to the point when you realize it's not the curse of Haman that really would bring us down, nor is the blessings of Mordechai. That to realize really it's really HaKadosh Baruch Hu that's really, so to speak, manipulating or controlling both. And so it's Ad Lo Yoda, you don't distinguish between the two, means you don't realize that there's any, that these two are the counter forces that we have to subject ourselves to, but really it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's one understanding. But just the words Ad Lo Yoda, just meaning not to know. There's something called Das, which is a kind of a rational kind of understanding things. And then there's something that's beyond Das, meaning that sometimes, let me use one example. So probably the most, to me, one most dramatic exchanges in the Megillah, you can almost sense and feel the tension, it's almost palpable, is when Mordechai and Esther are having this exchange of, should Esther go into the king or not? And Esther is saying, it's not the right time, right? And Mordechai is pushing, and you have this famous, and it's a really tense moment. And then Mordechai says something, it seems like he really hits her very hard. He says, Umiya Deya, Emla'es Kazai Sigat Lamalchus. Umiyo Deya, who knows? Why is he being so coy? Who knows? I mean, let him say. Maybe this is the reason why. What is it? Umiyo Deo? Who knows if this is the reason? Why is that? Why is that the point he's trying to make over here? Umiyo Deo. So it really is connected to the Ad Lo Yoda, meaning Mordechai says to Esther, if you want us to have a logical debate, for every argument I give you why you should do it, you can certainly give me a qualified counter argument that's logical. This is a suicidal mission. He's not even letting me get to first base because he'll be so angry I walk to the room. You can come up with certain illogical arguments or counter arguments. Mordechai says, I'm not talking about logical arguments. He said, that's clear that the Jews will be saved because they're a people of destiny. That's going to happen. They are a people of destiny. They're a people of faith and destiny. They're going to be saved. The question is, do you understand what your destiny is? Right? So umiyodeh means we're not going to get into the logic of das here. We're not going to try to figure out logic is right or not. But could you sense that just like there's a people destiny, that your role is one to play of destiny? There's no, it's too haphazard to say, too unlikely to say you happen to end up being the wife of the king. This is clearly part of destiny. Now, logically speaking, you don't see how that works. Leave logic for now. There's a point where the Jew can get Ad Lo Yoda, even when I don't quite understand logically, but I put my trust in Hashem, or I'm able to see beyond the logic to know that there's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, running the world. And that's why Mordechai says, Umiya Deya, the same way with the Ad Lo Yoda, Chaver Idish, Ad Lo Yoda, you have to get to that point where even beyond the logic, I'm able to feel this connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's saying the same thing to her. Let's leave the logical arguments alone of here. The Bnei Yisrael, we know. Intuitively we know, we sense, we see that there are people of destiny. Do you understand? Do you have a role to play in your destiny as well? Do you understand? Are you willing to embrace your destiny as well? Leave logic. It's something that's beyond logic. It's your destiny. How do you explain? destiny logically. There's no reason logically why this is my destiny. That's what Hashem destined for you. That's it. It's not logic. That's your destiny. You're willing to embrace your destiny. But otherwise, the Jews will have their destiny anyway. Okay, that's just one little thought. But let's start with the parsha, Terumah. So Terumah begins with the donations to the Mishkan, and we know that's the way the Jews were counted vis-a-vis these shkolim that were given. The Jews don't count in census people. There are a number of reasons for that. One we understand is the concept of ayin hara, which somehow when you count individuals, you're singling them out, you identify them as single individuals, and then you're inviting individual scrutiny. Most of us really, because we're part of a people, we get this extra measure of protection because we're part of the Jewish people. But when you single each individual out and you invite that scrutiny by God on an individual level, many of us may not merit. So we don't want to kind of highlight ourselves as individuals. We kind of want to sneak in as part of the greater whole. That's only the understanding that behind why we don't count individuals. The other idea why we don't count individuals is because on a deeper level we're shortchanging the Jewish people. What do I mean by that? We know that God tells Abraham earlier on that the Jews are compared to the stars in the heaven. There are multiples of stars in the heaven. And we know if you do the math, it doesn't seem to work out quite that way, right? It's not even close. What does it really mean? So there are many explanations. And the Baal Shem I mentioned before, the Baal Shem has a beautiful insight. He says, like a star, even after it expires, it's still sending light into this world. And even if a person passes on, you're talking about the Shmasai, even if a person passes on from this world, but he's still sending light into the world. She's still light. The mitzvahs, their energy is still being felt by people in this world. So that's the idea of what Jews are compared to the stars. But take that one step further, and that is that when we count people in a room, so we're acknowledging the people that we see present. We're really not acknowledging that there are other presences in the room that we don't feel, but that light that's being sent into the room, so to speak, by other people as well. And so when we point to individuals saying, you exist, we're kind of excluding all those, like Moshe Rabbeinu said, when he gave that final address, I'm speaking to the people that are here today and those that are not here today. Because even not here today, but their presence, so to speak, is felt. We can't see them physically, but there's a presence there as well. And that's an important piece. So the reason why we don't count is for that reason. Okay. But there's another interesting idea. You know, when nations take a census, very often it's to display their might, to kind of like, these are how many people we have. It's kind of a way of, making the seals, powerful by the numbers, the sheer masses that they have. That's not really the Jewish way of highlighting who we are by our numbers. In fact, if we would highlight our numbers, it would be rather depressing, right? We're not great in numbers. We recognize, however, that the way we count Jews is by their contributions. The Terumah, what we contribute to society, what we do to bring better into the world, that's how you count Jews. Count them by their contributions. Don't count them by the people that you see here and count those numbers and say, wow, we have a big number. Count contributions. And by that, we all know
huge.
Our contributions to the world are large in every area, in every single arena. So the Terumah, which represents donations, count those. Count those contributions, not just the charity, obviously, but contributions is large. I think it's a beautiful thought. But that's how we count. We count by contributions of the people, not the numbers, sheer numbers themselves. Okay. In the Mishkan that was to be built, there are many kalim. There are many different articles that were built. And I just want to just suppose, too, to get off on another point, and that is the shulchan, the table, which had the Paramount there, which represented the prosperity of it, right? The prosperity, the bread, the parnasa. And then you also had the Aron, the ark, which had the Torah, which represents Torah scholarship, obviously. And all the midos, all the measurements of the ark were half measurements. 1.5 by 2.5 by 1.5. Could be just easy for God to make them clean, 2 by 1 by, you might have to go to Home Depot and start, telling the guy to cut the thing in half. Make it 2 by 1 by 1. Make it simple, right? Why is God doing that? And the answer is because God wants to teach us a lesson that when it comes to Torah scholarship, a person always has to view himself as not yet complete. I'm not yet done. There's more to learn. There's more to study. So those half measures remind us that there's always more to go. It's so beautiful that the word for Torah scholar in Hebrew is not Torah Chacham, but Talmud Chacham. That every Torah scholar realizes, at the heart, I'm still a student. I'm always a student. So that's the idea behind the half measures of the ark. On the other hand, let's look at the Shulchan. The Shulchan, the measurements were full measurements, 2 by 1, and that represents the idea that it's the opposite. When it comes to prosperity, what a person should feel is not, I'm missing, but it's the opposite. I have what I need. I'm complete. I'm full. And so the measurements of the Shulchan were full for that reason, because their attitude when it comes to prosperity is I should feel I have, not always think I need more. Now, if you really check in the Chumash, you notice that I was not kind of saying it totally accurate, because one of the measurements of the Shulchan is a half measurement. Now, how does that fit in? So I can conveniently leave it out and make my drasha work out okay? Or I can tell you, no, that really there's a reason behind it as well. The reason why one measurement is half is because the way to feel, how do you feel full and satiated in the physical world? In a world that we're always constantly wanting more. So most people think, well, if I finally get what I want, I'll be satisfied. It's the opposite. The more you keep filling yourself up, the hungrier you get. The more that you satiate your desires, it's counterintuitive. You think, okay, I'll finally be satisfied. No, that you just kind of develop an appetite for more. And the only way to stop that is the opposite. There's I think it was called the Tainus HaRaida, if I'm not mistaken. There was a great rabbi who would, he had a certain kind of fast that he instituted for himself. And what was that fast? I think you guys will like it. When he ate dinner or any meal, he'd leave a tiny little portion of it over. He wouldn't eat everything, he'd leave a little bit over.
My mother would be very upset.
Very especially with the vegetables. That right. Okay. But the reason why he did that was because he said, listen, if I clean my plate, what I'm basically saying is I stopped eating because there's no more left on the plate. What did I train myself? Just to eat whatever's on the plate. And if you fill up the plate again, I'm going for more. But if I train myself, I'm just going to leave a little bit over. I've taught myself, you know what, I don't have to have everything on the plate. And that's how you learn to become satisfied. If you eat the whole plate, then you say, oh gosh, there's nothing left. So you're still hungry, but there's nothing else for me to eat, so I'm still hungry, right? If you leave a little over and you put it away, you've taught yourself, I can be satisfied with less. That's the idea behind the half measure together with the 2 whole measures. You want to feel the full measure? You have to learn the lesson of the half measure as well. All right?
Rabbi,
yeah.
There's a famous story about J. Paul Getty, who was the richest man in the world in the 1970s.
And he had a phone booth in it for his guest house.
He was worth billions when $100 was a lot of money.
Right.
So he said, Mr. Getty, you have all this wealth and assets and billions. He says, how much more do you need? He says, just a little more.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
That's the way it's
That's the way it is.
We all have.
That's exactly what it is. So what I want to do is move from that into a different subject, and maybe we'll come back to more of this later on, but I want to just change the pace. We did talk about, I started teaching, we did a little bit of Seres Dibros on Parashat Yisro, right? We did a little bit of that then. So I want to talk about one of the Seres Dibros. I think at the time I said I would get to it, and I never got to it. I want to talk about one of the Dibros called Lo Signoi, right? Lo Signoi, do not steal, all right? So everyone knows what that means. It means do not steal. Except Rashi tells us it actually doesn't mean that. It means do not kidnap. All right? Now the commentaries of Sforno and others tell us that it does mean to include other kinds of stealing as well. But for whatever reason, and that's the question I want to ask you, is why did the Torah, when they wanted to talk about stealing, specifically talk about what seemed to be a less common, form of stealing, which maybe most people are not tempted to do, certainly. Why do we talk about it in more general terms? Do not steal means do not steal. Why would the Torah specifically talk about do not kidnap? So I want to talk about Lo Signoi in terms of kidnapping, and then talk about why the Torah chose that, and then we'll talk about a little bit more this aspect of money and how to deal with the physical world. Okay, so I want to share with you 2 explanations, and they're really kind of connected. The truth of the matter is that there's something unique about kidnapping. It's not just you stealing a person. It's a lot deeper than that. The Torah very often, when the Torah says Vayikach, he took this object, he took this tree. Whenever it says Vayikach by a person, Rashi is always quick to point out, Lachcha b'dvarim. He took him with words. It means you can't physically take a person. That's absurd. So when it says he took a person, it means I convinced you to come. Lachcha, I took you with words. It doesn't mean I physically took you. Because I can't physically take you, right?
Right. No.
But if I physically take you, what did I do? I could take an object, right? Mm-hmm. If I take you physically, I've turned you into an object. The kidnapping is, the real indignity is, I've dehumanized you. I've treated you like an object. I'm physically taking you and declaring you're an object. That is dehumanizing, that's desensitizing, that's the part that really is what the Torah is trying to emphasize, to be sensitive. It's not just the act of stealing, which and by the way, kidnapping is not so uncommon. I think I just read over 1 million kidnappings a year. Over 1 million.
Today.
Yeah, today. I was like blown away by that. Yeah. But anyway, but the bottom line is that kidnapping, right, the Torah says it's not just stealing, you're dehumanizing. You're denigrating and you're ignoring the sensitivity of the human spirit. I'm now making you into an object. And today, by the way, it doesn't just apply to stealing and kidnapping, objectifying. We could talk about all the sexual harassment cases.
Right.
That really is all about making somebody feel like an object.
Right.
That's exactly what's going on. And the protest is exactly for that. You know, to me, it's a lot late. They should have been doing this a lot earlier because everyone knew this was going on and
Right.
whatever the case is, whatever it is. But the bottom line is, that is the real outlaw, the real crime is the dehumanizing, the treating someone like an object, turning them into an object. And sometimes they may not be able to articulate it, but they're in great pain. What their real pain is, I've been turned into an object. I've been turned into an object. And that's really the outlaw, that's the really terrible thing about Signo. That's what the Torah is really highlighting. That's unique about stealing. All right. But I want to just move on and kind of use that as a jumping point. All right. And then from there, we'll develop a little more about the whole idea of the monetary system. Okay. When you steal property from somebody, I believe the technical term or the legal term it's called a crime against property. Are you familiar with this? It's called crime against property. That's what it's called. When you steal something, it's called crime against property. The Torah is telling us, mistake. That's not what it is. When you steal from somebody, it's not a crime against property, it's a crime against people. Let's think what I mean. They've done studies, and they don't. I'm just curious, buddy. Anybody here ever getting broken into? A house get broken into? Nobody?
No, thank God, no.
Years ago.
Years ago. Okay, so it actually happened to us.
Ooh.
It happened to us about 10 years ago. It was the funniest thing. Actually, it was kind of funny. The guy, there was a bunch of these. Actually, a bunch of young kids came in, and they turned over every single shelf in the house, every one, because they were looking for cash. What?
Was anyone home?
No, we ran home.
Okay.
Thank God. There's everything upside down, except one place. I'll tell you in a second. But the funny part is that my wife comes to the house. She's there first, and she just sees a bunch of drawers upside down. I guess she didn't look at the whole house yet, but she's seen the first drawers. She calls it. She goes, "Sweet, if you can't find something, just ask me where it is." Anyway, so what are you talking about? This time I was actually, I was innocent most of the time, I'm not innocent. Okay, so, but actually it was a hashgacha, by the way, because I had no money in the house, I had no cash, except I did have quite a bit of cash, because someone had, I had cash in my study downstairs. Now, a month before, there was a flood in the basement, so we had to remove all the svarim. I had to remove all the svarim from the shelves, because I had to take out the carpet, and they put them all on the desk and around the desk. So there were thousands, literally I have a lot of books all around the desk. So this thief, the only place he didn't go to was the one shelf where I had money, was my desk, where my study was, because it was like too many svarim to navigate. So that's the only thing left alone. And that saved the money. Interesting. Okay, but let me tell you, so when I found out that somebody broke into my home, my first reaction was not how much money, what was the monetary loss. I was angry. It was like, I earned that money. You don't have a right to just walk in. Like, it was more of like, and not just that.
You felt violated.
What? You feel
violated.
Right, exactly. It's traumatizing. You feel violated. Your space has been invaded. And people actually sometimes, they don't really trust anymore. It can get really extreme. But the bottom line is, when you commit a crime against property, it's really a crime against a person.
Right.
It affects the person. And I would just take that one step further. Explain what that means. That's what I kind of launch into that. Why does it affect us so much in that way? Now, obviously, feeling violated, your space, you feel unsafe, that's pretty self-evident. But there's another piece, and that is the sages tell us, Adam rotze kav shelo yoseh mitisha kavin shechaveru. A person would prefer 1 bushel of his own fruit product than 9 bushels that somebody would gift him. Right? Adam rotze kav shelo. Kav is like a bushel. I once saw somebody that we had coffee in yeshiva, and this guy insisted on making his own little brew, his own coffee. I said, "Oh, that's what Gemara meant. Adam wants a kavish shalom. A person wants one, rather have his own 1 coffee than 9 coffees that somebody else made." And that's true as well. All right, but it's really part of the same thing, which is, why is it that a person prefers one bushel of his own wheat or his own fruit, whatever the case is, because if I created that, there's part of me in that thing, right? That thing is an extension of who I am. I feel connected to it. And I've mentioned, I think before that, today we've all been turned into thinking about, we're just consumers. It's all about consuming, right? Amazon has us totally swallowed up, and you're all day, and my kids are all day just on the Amazon, right? I can say every day, literally, I walk into my house, I'm tripping over some box of something that somebody ordered, which they're going to return the next day for another box, right? It goes on, but they're just consuming, right? The Torah says we're not supposed to be consumers, we're supposed to be producers. Hashem gave us creative energy. He wants us to create in this world. And when we create, we're extending ourselves into the world. So our money, our property is an extension of ourselves. And it's really, it's an indicator of what we've succeeded to do by bringing ourselves into the world. Hashem wants us to take our creative energy and bring it into the world. And so there's a connection between me and that thing. And when someone takes that from me, they're taking a little bit of me as well. That's what you really feel. You really, so it's not a crime against property, it's a crime against people. And that's why when the Torah wants to talk about stealing, it used the example of kidnapping. Because there it's clear it's a crime against people. Right? So the Torah wants us to say that all Geneva really is a crime against people. So it uses the most evident, the most obvious crime against human beings is kidnapping. But it really wants by extension to say that every form of stealing is not a crime against property. You have to realize that you're doing damage to people as well. And the Torah wants to highlight that sensitivity as well. Yeah?
Stealing is a crime against a person's neshama in a sense, and by being a crime against a human being created in the image of Hashem, it's a crime against Hashem too.
Well, any Bein Adam L'Chavero, you can argue successfully, is also a crime against Hashem. But I'm going to actually say one more piece about that. It is a crime against Hashem, but in a different way as well. I don't get there, but you're 100% right. You had a question. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to make a comment that it's interesting because you started with Purim, and when it says about Esther, it says Vatilakach Esther. Esther was taken.
Right.
The same thing that you said before.
Excellent. 100%. Very good. Excellent point. Very, very good. Okay. So, why is it a crime against Hashem? We'll go there and we'll come around. On the one hand, we're always taught that, physical world, Gashmias, that's not our world. We're supposed to live in the world of spirituality. And yet, I've been talking about Adam Rotza Kapshalo is a legitimate feeling that Hashem wants us to have connected to our possessions. So how do you kind of draw that line between when possessions and materialism is a good thing to have a display, and what is it really when you're overdoing it? So there's a famous showdown we all know about when Yaakov made Esav after 22 years, right? There's a showdown. And Yaakov comes with his entire entourage of family and not mortified, livestock, and Esav sees him and he's like stunned. He says, what is all this, right? Now, on a deeper level, what's really going on is, they say to Yaakov, hey, didn't we have this kind of understood deal we cut? You take the spiritual world, I take the physical world. Mm-hmm. What are you doing with my world? What are you doing with my world? So Yaakov says, no, Asher Chanani Elokim. This is something that God gifted to me. What was he saying? Early on in that exchange, when Yaakov offers things to Esav as gifts, Esav says, no, Yeshli Rav, I got plenty. Yaakov responds, we all know, and says, Yeshli Chol, I have all that I need. Although it sounds very similar, they're miles apart. Yeshli Rav means I have plenty. What does plenty mean? Plenty means, there's no number to it. It's just plenty, it's just a mass. And when is something plenty? Well, compared to something that's less plenty, that's plenty, right? It's not even, there's nothing about it intrinsically. It just, in comparison to something else, it has value. What value is that if it doesn't have value in of itself?
Not emotionally satisfying.
Right. Right. And for him, it's just, I have lots of stuff. And if I have more stuff, then I have lots of more stuff. And it's all about collecting more stuff. Yeshli Rav. It's right. Rav is like a mass. And it's only a mass. There's no definition to the mass. It's just lots of stuff. In fact, you have Ma Gadlu Masech Hashem versus Ma Rabu Masech Hashem. Rabu means just lots. It's great. It's enormous. It's vast. Gadol means something great, but it already has form and shape and purpose. And so for Esav, it's kind of, it's shapeless. It's just a mass of stuff, and the more mass, the bigger the mass. Yaakov says, Yesh li kol, I have all that I need. Notice he sees everything that he has as something destined for him to be purposeful in life. And we all know that's why Yaakov went back for those small little jugs that he didn't need. He was a wealthy man. But he understood that 1 second, if that's part of my lot, if that's part of who I am, if that's what I'm supposed to be using, that's part of my toolkit, I got to go back for that. So Yaakov sees the world as Yesh li kol. I have everything I need, but everything has a purpose. God sent it me for a purpose. So that's what you say. Asher chanani l'Elokim. This is all that God has graced me, and I see everything as a gift from God. By the way, even the children. He says Asher chanani Elokim. That we have to realize, parents have to realize, that our first responsibility to children is not just because we want them to give us nachas, to give us pleasure, but it's because we have to realize that God wants to entrust us with souls for us to develop. We have to realize, first and foremost, always when we're dealing with children, these are gifts from God. That's our attitude, and that's what Yaakov sees about these children. Asher chanani Elokim. But everything he has is also a gift from God. If that's the case, anytime you steal, you're stealing against Hashem too. Why? Because you're taking away the stuff that Hashem said he is supposed to have for his destiny, to fulfill his purpose. So you really, it's a crime against Hashem in that sense, because you're not recognizing that was him, he was supposed to have. In fact, in Sefer Mishpatim, I don't think we got there in Sefer Mishpatim, but in Sefer Mishpatim, or Parashat Mishpatim rather, which deals, as we discussed, a lot of monetary laws. The Zohar actually calls it Eila Sefer HaGegulim. This is the book of reincarnation. Well, okay, now reincarnation is a little bit past my pay scale. I'm not going to get too much into it, but what it does mean on some level is, what does the Zohar mean? Without going into what Gilgul is, we certainly believe in Gilgul Shamas. How many Gilgulim to a person? Arizal says 4, and we don't know what that. We're not going to go into all those different pratim, those different details. But one thing is, there's something called Gehenim and something called Gilgulim. We understand that somehow Gilgul is somehow to make amends for a previous life, but so Gehenim also is supposed to do that. What's the distinction? Gehenim is kind of like a hospital. There's something wrong, it's got to be tweaked, got to be fixed. Gehenim kind of tweaks or fixes that particular area that needs amending, however that's done. If somebody is supposed to be in the army and they go MIA, there's nothing to tweak. You got to start all over again. He just didn't serve his purpose. If a person doesn't fulfill an essential core of his life, he's got to start over again, because it's not a question of tweaking. He just never lived the life he's supposed to live. The money that we have, Mishpatim deals with all the extension of our money and our property, is part of our toolkit. Each one of us has our own toolkit for really living this world. If you've messed that up, you haven't lived yet. You need to go through a Gilgul, through reincarnation, so to speak, because you haven't lived life. The property that we have is part of who we're supposed to be, and if we mess with that, we steal, we're not appropriate, we don't do things, we don't take things honestly, we haven't really developed ourselves. The possessions that we have are things we're supposed to develop. If we haven't developed ourselves properly, then we really got to, almost so to speak, start over again. That's what the really Zohar means when he says this is safe for Gilgulim. But the bottom line is that we have to see money as an extension of ourselves in a way that's part of our toolkit we're supposed to use, and we value it as something that could be terrific and healthy. But when you step over across the line to the Asavs of the world, which is the Rab, that's when we say that the Gashmi is certainly a hindrance, and it pulls you down, and it's a world of overindulgence. But a little more than that, I forgot who said this. He said, somebody's Gashmius needs, somebody's physical needs becomes your spiritual responsibility. In other words, somebody's physical needs, they have physical needs. For you, that's a spiritual responsibility. And that's when you grow spiritually. When they have physical needs, that becomes your spiritual opportunity. Their physical needs are your spiritual opportunity. That's really what's going on. Now, in understanding that people have rights to their possessions, right? And that's why the stealing is violating those rights, certainly. But the Torah, generally speaking, I always mention that when you, if you go to Washington, D.C., I'm there every other Shabbos, and sometimes you have guests coming, they want to see the White House. I tell them, they're a nicer house in Potomac than our White House, but they want to go to the White House anyway. So you invariably go in front of Pennsylvania Avenue, and there's somebody protesting something. That's it. They're always protesting their rights. They're always protesting their rights all the time. was interesting, just not too long ago, literally. They have some people there, a lot of crazy. One were protesting circumcision. That was the whole thing, circumcision.
Right.
It's a big thing, right?
They're not crazy, they're evil.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that on some level for sure. Anyway, so they pull me over. They want to. I usually don't take the bait. I'm not interested. It's like silly. Anyway, but they said they believe in circumcision. They obviously knew what they were talking about.
Right.
I said, let just one question. Are you pro-abortion? Oh, absolutely. 1 second. So you have no problem taking a life, right? But you wipe the skin off a baby. That's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So that was it. That was
What
it.
would they say?
Nothing. They just walked away. It's like, are you kidding me? Like that's anyway. Okay, but let's go back.
That's interesting.
But
It's a good response.
I have to remember that one, right?
but the idea is like this: that people focus on their rights. Nobody focuses on their responsibilities, right?
Right.
Torah always wants to focus on our responsibilities, right? So when we do damage, we have responsibility to fix it, right? They have rights, but the Torah always talks to the halacha in terms of our responsibility. And why is that? It's pretty obvious that when you focus on rights, you're focusing on what you can take for yourself. When you focus on responsibility, you're focusing on what you can give. Giving is always something that Judaism is focused on, not the taking. So of course we all have rights, even in a marriage. In a marriage, both people and the parties have rights and responsibilities. But if each individual focuses on their rights, that's a recipe for disaster. Because that basically means each one's focusing on what I am owed. It's about me. When you focus on responsibility, you're focusing on what you can give. Of course, both people focus on responsibility. They both end up receiving too, which has to happen in a marriage. But that's the healthy way for it to happen, to focus on your responsibility as opposed to rights. When you're focusing on rights, you're focusing on me and what I want to take. You focus on responsibility, you're focusing on what you want to be able to give, and that's obviously the healthy way to develop a marriage.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
The question is,
Sure.
is it possible for it to be somebody's responsibility to protest?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So it's
Yes.
protesting itself.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah, 100%.
taking,
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there was a famous rabbi that said sometimes, with Eov, had to go. So we know that there were 3 that Paro took into counsel to what to do, how to solve the Jewish problem, right? Went to Bilam, to Eov, and to, what am I forgetting? Bilam, Eov,
Yisro.
and Yisro.
Yisro.
Right, thank you. So we know that Yisro ran away, all right? Eov remained silent. And for that reason, he was punished, that he suffered pain his entire life, right? That's what the Midrash says. So somebody asked, but 1 second, he remained silent because he didn't feel there's anything he could actually accomplish. Power was not going to listen to him anyway. So I think the Brisker Rebbe said it best. He said in Yiddish, and we'll have Milt translate for us.
Right.
He said, "Oy bis tutve veitnen."
I have no idea.
Right.
If it hurts, you cry.
If it hurts, you have to cry. It doesn't make a difference. You keep thinking about it. Sometimes you have to protest because you show that it hurts. If you don't cry, that means it doesn't hurt, and that's a problem. So protesting sometimes is important because that's to show that it hurts you.
Right.
And if you're not protesting, that means it doesn't hurt you enough, right? So 100% there's place for that too. Absolutely. Okay. So low signal, we said. You had a question? Okay. So if you would have done that at an auction, you would have bought the painting. You know, that counts. That's it. All right. So low signal certainly means not to kidnap. We learned that means not to dehumanize anybody, treat them like an object, and that doesn't apply to stealing and kidnapping, but we talked about how current that is as well. It certainly applies to stealing and invading somebody's space, and it's not a crime against property, it's a crime against people. But Lo Signav goes to even much more finer levels. You all know, you can't mislead somebody. You can't, even, it's called Gnevas Das, where you mislead them. That's called stealing as well. In this world, I don't know, in the secular world, how far that goes or not, but the Torah takes that very, very seriously. And stealing's also, it's interesting. Somebody asked me to watch this video. Tell me what you think. So they have all these social study videos where they, in one case they had this guy pretend to be a blind person, and he says, "Oh, could you change this $5 bill?" And it's a $50 bill. And there's how many people will grab the 5 and give him 5 singles, or how many will say that it's really 50? And then there's another one where they, this guy behind the cash register says, "Oh, I forgot something behind the store, the thing for a second," and the cash register is open. How many guys will grab money or even some stuff on the counter? So I think the one I was watching with was a cash register, and you saw the guy left. A guy grabs a cigarette lighter because that's what's on the counter. One guy grabs one of his energy drinks. Now, And then the guy actually says, "Hey, it's missing," and it's on camera. And you see the guy is actually embarrassed. They're really embarrassed they even did it. Why they do it? Why they? You can't even say that there was a money opportunity. It was a 50-cent lighter, right? Where does that come from? Why would they? Now I think certainly people that are really serious about being honest maybe won't have that temptation. I understand. But these people, I'm not saying these people that broke and entered. Probably those guys never stole before, but the opportunity was there and they couldn't resist. What do you suppose that is?
Well, certainly a lack of respect.
Certain lack of respect. Okay. No, I don't think it's one answer. I think there are a couple of things. First of all, we have to recognize the temptation called money. That it doesn't even make sense. Sometimes we do things for money when it doesn't make sense. But the temptation for money is sometimes goes to absurd lengths. In fact, it's interesting. The sages tell us, "Mi sheish lo mana rotza Messiah." Whoever has $100 wants $200, and if you have $200, you want $400, right? So whatever you have, you always seem to want more. In fact, I think the Kli Yakar says this very beautifully. The word for money in Hebrew is mammon, right? Now it's interesting. Every letter, Hebrew letter, can be spelled out. Like Aleph is Aleph Lamed Pei, Aleph. Gimel, Gimel Mem Lamed. All right? Let's spell the letters of mammon. Mem is Mem Mem. Right? Next letter Mem is also Mem Mem. Vav is Vav Vav. Nun, Nun Nun.